Hello and welcome to video 4 in this mini crash course on the basics of songwriting. In this video, we'll be focusing on your chords and chord progressions by answering 4 important questions, which are: do I want the same chord progression throughout the entire song? Am I creating a chord progression based on a major or minor scale? Should I stick to basic major and minor chords? And lastly, should I use a common chord progression? And then at the end of the video, I've put together a chord progression for our hypothetical example song we started in the last video. But first, let's have a quick run through about how to build chords and a spot of music theory. So let's get started. Your song will most likely be based on a musical scale, which is a collection of pitches. Unless you plan on crafting a percussion-based song where pitch isn't really important, you'll need to use a musical scale for your song. Now, if you're unfamiliar with music scales, chords and progressions, or music theory in general, then you'll find this video rather confusing, as I won't be going through them in much depth. So I recommend checking out my mini crash course on the basics of music theory, particularly videos 3, 5 and 6, because these solely focus on music scales, chords and progressions. But I'll put the link in the description below so you can check it out prior to continuing with this video. So firstly, let's quickly have an overview of music scales. So our 2 most common music scales are major and natural minor. Both contain 7 notes, and they are created by their own unique music interval pattern. So major scales follow an interval pattern of whole tone, semitone, whole tone, whole tone, whole tone, then a semitone. For example, if we start at the key of A on a keyboard, using the major interval pattern, we create the scale A major, which will be A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, and G sharp. Now, minor natural scales follow a different interval pattern, which is whole tone, semitone, whole tone, whole tone, semitone, whole tone, whole tone. So let's start at the key of A again and use the minor interval pattern to create the scale A minor, which is A, B, C, D, E, F and G. Now if we quickly compare the both scales, A major and A minor, when we start at the same key, the only differences you'll find will be the 3rd, the 6th and the 7th note. So in the major scale, these are sharp, C sharp, F sharp and G sharp. However, in the minor scale, they've been lowered by a semitone to produce C, F and G. Major scales tend to sound happy and feel more uplifting. Minor scales tend to sound sad and gloomy. So when deciding on which type of scale you'd like to use, firstly ask yourself, am I creating a happy or a sad song? So what is a chord? A chord is 2 or more harmonic notes played simultaneously. And you've most likely heard chords played whilst watching a live performance of a band or checking out some videos on YouTube. You'll find that a singer usually sings a vocal line and there'll be someone strumming the guitar or playing the piano, and what they're usually playing are the chords to the song. So how do I know which chords I can use for my song? The scale you choose creates the chords for your song. So for example, in A minor, we have the notes A, B, C, D, E, F and G. And these notes will create your chords if you choose A minor as your scale. So to create basic major and minor triad chords, which are chords using 3 notes, we use the notes in alternate pattern in sets of 3. So for example, A minor, we get A, we skip the B, then we get C, we skip the D, and we get E. Then our next one is B diminished, B D F, C major, C E G, D minor, D F A, E minor, E G B, F major, F A C, and G major, G B D. Now the most important chords in any scale are always the 1st, the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th. So in our example, it would be A minor, D minor, E minor, and F. Now it is worth noting that you're not bound to these chords alone, and you don't have to stick to the notes in any given scale. But for this mini crash course, we're just going to keep it simple. So what is a chord progression? A chord progression is simply a series of chords played in a sequence. Using chords to create a chord progression is part of our major 3 in creating a song. If someone is more musical than lyrical, they'll usually start off by creating a chord progression first, to set the tone or the mood. With music scales, chords and progressions briefly covered, let's get down to the questions. So our first question, do I want the same chord progression throughout the entire song? Now you can focus on just one chord progression for your entire song. It's your song and it's your choice. But the same chord progression repeated over and over again can get relatively boring quite quickly. Therefore, to combat this, what many artists do is have one chord progression for the verse and a slight variation for the chorus. So if your song is in A minor, your chord progression could be A minor, F, D minor, E minor for both verses, and A minor, E minor, F major, D minor for the chorus. For the chorus, the arrangement has been slightly changed. So question number 2, am I creating a chord progression based on a major or minor scale? As you mentioned earlier, major scales tend to sound happy and minor scales tend to sound gloomy, and your chords will have the same impact. If you choose all minor chords in your chord progression, you'll take the listener on a sad and gloomy journey. And if you choose all major chords in your chord progression, you'll take the listener on a happy journey. So be mindful of the emotional journey you want your listeners to experience. If you're using a major scale to create a bright, happy, uplifting song, but then use all minor chords, then it might have the opposite effect on the listener. However, music is all about creativity and expressing yourself, so there is nothing stopping you using all major chords for that tragic breakup song. So question 3, should I stick to basic major and minor chords? Using basic major and minor chords from your scale is the easiest way to create your chord progression, especially if you're a beginner. And there is nothing wrong with using basic chords. Every beginner has to start somewhere. Even artists you hear today still use basic major and minor chords, especially if you listen to pop music quite a lot. Basic doesn't necessarily mean boring. It can feel limiting only having 7 chords to choose from for your chord progression. However, going straight into the deep end when you're not sure if you can swim isn't a sensible thing to do. You'll learn to swim, and it's the same with songwriting. You learn the basics, master the basics, and then you expand into new territory if you desire. I started off using basic, major and minor chords for all my music, and I still create songs with them today. Chords add texture and depth to a song. there is usually less room for expression here, which is why we have melodies and harmonies in songs. Once you've created several songs using basic major and minor chords alone, you can, if you wish, venture onto other chords in your progression, such as suspended, added, inversions, 5th and 9th chords, etc. Question 4. Should I use a common chord progression? If this is your first song or you're a beginner, the best way to approach crafting a chord progression is to take a sequence that you know already works. We have common chord progressions because they are known to portray the right amount of tension and resolution throughout the progression. Therefore, it makes them ideal for telling a story. So here are the 3 most common chord progressions, which is the 1st, the 6th, then the 4th, then the 5th chords in a sequence. The 1st, the 5th, the 6th, then the 4th, and then the 1st, the 4th, and the 5th. Remember, the chords you focus on the most will be your tonic chord, the first chord in the scale. Therefore, if your song is in A minor, the chord A minor should be referred to a lot. So let's put some chords to our song. In our example song, we have a verse, pre-chorus, chorus and a bridge to create a chord progression for. So let's have a quick recap of the lyrics. Our verse: burning all day to the bone, clock has long since expired, it's a long way to my throne, a grave shortcut is desired. In our pre-chorus, the light fades and I wander to the unknown. And our chorus: then my heart beats fast, how long will this last? Branches clasping, the wind is haunting, and my scream echoes. And lastly, our bridge: will I see light or have another fright? Will I see light or have another fright? Will I see light or have another fright? And my scream echoes. It's a pretty gloomy song, so a minor scale will be best suited. So I've chosen the key of A minor. Therefore, we have the notes A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, and the following chords: A minor, B diminished, C major, D minor, E minor, F major, and G major. Now, as a quick note, I could have chosen any scale for my song. There's no right or wrong answer. Now, I've made this song easy and chosen a common chord progression for the verse and the chorus. So for the verse, I've chosen the chord progression 1, 5, 6, 4, which is A minor, E minor, F major, D minor. And for our chorus, I've gone for 1, 4, 5, 5, which would be A minor, D minor, E minor, then E minor. And each chord will be played for an entire bar. So each chord will be played for 4 beats. And here's how they both sound. And for the pre-chorus, I've chosen this progression purely on how it sounds. It sounds happy and suddenly it goes bleak, like I have a bad feeling about this. So for our pre-chorus, I've chosen C major, C major, F major, E minor. So 3, 3, 6, 5. So here's how the pre-chorus sounds. The bridge, I'm going to go between happy and sad chords to match the emotion going through the lyrics. Will I see light? Happy. Or will I have another fright? Sad. So for our bridge, I've chosen C major, E minor, C major, E minor, C major, E minor. And here's how the bridge sounds. Remember, your chords portray the emotional roller coaster that your listener will experience. So play around with chords and their sequence until you find the right pattern that makes you feel exactly what you want. So that completes video 4 in this mini crash course on the basics of songwriting. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful. If you did, please give me a beautiful thumbs up and subscribe to the channel below. And if you do have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. And when you're ready, click on the next video in the series where we learn how to craft your melody.